Today's guest is a powerhouse in branding, business, and impact. He's the managing partner of 36 Creative, an award-winning brand agency, and the co-founder of Mutt Society, a nonprofit getting kids on bikes. A giver, a lover, an adventurer. He lives with full throttle passion for family, business, and mountain biking. If you're ready for real insight and relentless drive, let's dive in. Trent Sanders, welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it, man. I'm pumped to be here. Thanks for taking the time.
Hell yeah, dude. So I'm glad we can link up. You got to tell me, where you're at. We were talking before we press record here, and you got yourself in a predicament here.
Yeah, my buddy, actually my partner in Mutt Society, bought a ludicrous RV out in Bend, Oregon, and he invited me earlier this week. I said, no, man, there's no way I can do it. I got so much going on with work at 36, with Mutt Society, with everything, and I denied the request. And then I told my wife and showed her the picture, and she forced me to come. So the coolest part of the story so far, without any of the future adventures driving back, is that my incredible wife actually encouraged me to do a cross-country trip with my one of my best friends. Pretty rad.
Man,
Yeah.
I always say, you have to have a very strong woman behind you, and obviously that's speaking right now.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. Absolutely.
So you're at the RV dealership now, sitting in the salesman's office after what? How many hours you been traveling?
We got up at 3:00, 3 a.m. in Salem, New Hampshire. Did a couple of transfers on the old airlines, and yeah, we're chilling here. We're going to I guess Crane, Oregon has a hot spring, so that's our first destination. It's about 2.5 hours away.
Oh, that'll be cool. And then you're gonna drive it all the way back here to New Hampshire.
Yep, couple days on the road.
Oh man,
You can't do that. Yeah, you can't do that without an adventure somewhere along the way. So we're looking forward to the unknown.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, dude, I wish you safe travels. We'll kick this thing off tonight, but tell me. Well, let's actually first. You came back into my life after a couple of years, I'd say. Right now, you were. We linked up, I think, and remind me if I forget. But when I did that charity bike build, I think that's when we kind of started chatting a little bit, and then I kind of learned about Mutt Society. So that was really neat, and I think that we talked at a special time. Obviously, my story. With my difficulties with some of the mental health things that I've dealt with over the years, and it's funny kind of how the universe aligns, right? I told you that, a couple days before, so it was like a few year gap, right? I think between when we talked. Is that accurate? So, it's kind of crazy. So I told you I was meeting with my mentor. It was a Sunday night. And we were chatting, and he was challenging me with a bunch of things that, are way outside my comfort zone, which is the whole point. Right. And, he says, I need you to do more speaking engagements this year. And I was like, all right, yeah, like no problem. I hadn't really given it much thought, and, whatever he tells me to do, I'll just do it, which is great. So Tuesday, right, a couple of days later, I'm sitting at my desk and I'm at work, and I get a text from you, and I'm like, oh damn, Trent, holy shit, like blast from the past. And then it just popped up on my phone. It says, hey, I have a speaking engagement for you. And I was just like, I wish somebody had a camera on me when that happened, because I just sat there for a second, and I looked up at the sky, and I was just like, what? Like this, there's no way. And before I even responded to you, I just screenshotted it and sent it over to my mentor. And he just texted me back. He's like, there is no coincidences. And I was like,
nice.
Yeah. And I loved it. And of course, like before I even heard anything from you, I'm like scared shitless. So I'm like, who knows what it's going to be? And I'm like, dude, I'm in, like tell me more. So, thank you for reaching out, and, tell me a little bit about how you got kind of tied up with that organization.
The brand Mutt Society has grown pretty significantly, just awareness wise, over the last couple of years. I full transparency, I think not just in our space, but in every space. Money's been tight the last couple of years. Fundraising's been tough. Um, but we've just kind of been trucking along, and through our ambassador program, which is, some professional athletes and then a bunch of kids, some in need, some not. We've just, in some ways, supported the community, but gotten out into the community. And we've had a couple of conversations earlier in 2024 with some individuals in Canada. Tanya on our board is from Canada as well. So it's kind of spread north, and people understand we're just trying to get kids on bikes. People understand that we have a passion for giving back, trying to leave a mark on this crazy world. And so, they're doing some things up north, and reached out to see if there was a way to collaborate. They had 8 kids that were aspiring to be more professionally involved in the sport, but didn't have the means to do so. So we gathered up. I think we did 3 downhill slash cross country enduro bikes for them. Delivered them up in Portland, Maine, when they were down visiting family, and then just started a really fruitful conversation. Dan, who's leading that, and his son Caleb, who does the more of the bike centered charity. Um, they just started talking about how they could connect us with different grants, organizations up there that we might be able to help, and yeah, just one thing led to the other, and they asked for a couple of my friends or athletes that I knew that if they had an inspiring story, that that I should invite them and get some traction there. And honestly, man, I I'm just gonna jump back for anybody listening. Hopefully, there's a little bit of value here, but I was introduced to Mike from one of my buddies, Ethan, with the initiative that he did for the veteran. Uh, it was a Mission 33,
Mission 22. Yeah. Yep.
Mission 22, and we started talking. And I was going through a time in life, and there was this dude that I'd never met. Had one conversation on the phone that told me, I'll get emotional if I go too far into it, but I texted you for some reason. You were the person I texted and said, "Man, I'm having a hard time." You said, "Dude, go out and ride your bike," and I did. It helped, and for some reason, it just kind of dropped off from there. You and I going back and forth, get this opportunity, and for some odd reason, you pop into my head 2, 3 years later, and here we are. So Mike's one of the speakers at the We Believe um, event it's in May, up in Canada, right around New
And
Brunswick.
May
So
15th, man, looking
yeah.
forward to it. Like what was really kind of badass about it is you kind of undersold the shit out of it, which, so you totally undersold it. I was like, oh, all right, yeah, I'm going to go, I'll go talk with, like a couple people he's probably got
Couple
together
kids.
and whatever. Yeah. And he's like, let me get you on with like the organizer. And then like, started getting official real quick. And I talked to Dan, and super, super sweet guy, man. He's just a great salt of the earth person. Like you just tell he cares about what he's doing. And so I told him my story. I told him about my struggles with mental health and the deep story. I don't think I've ever even told the whole story on this podcast, which there's probably should be some time for that. But my entire story, and then how bikes saved my life, and I just pass that along to people. Right? It's all about movement. When we're in these bad places mentally, we tend to get stuck, and we're just sitting still in our heads, and getting moving is really what matters. And I found that in so many different things, since finding bikes. But get on the phone with Dan, telling the story. He's like, yeah, I think you should come talk to the group. And I'm like, cool. And I'm like, sounds great. And he's like, yeah, so I'm going to need the speech by like the end of the week, and you can send it to production. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, send it to production. He goes, I'm going to get you like 10 minutes in front of 8,000 people. How's that sound? And I'm like, oh, holy shit, man. I'm like, wow, Trent, he really came through on this one. But it's funny because you think about the way the universe aligns, and, I never was a big believer in this, but I told you, I'm talking to my mentor. He's challenged me with this. You popped back into my life from like 3 years ago, and we had conversations pretty deep, really fast, like one phone conversation. And we were getting into some shit that most men don't want to talk about when it comes to their feelings and how they, what they're dealing with and how they're feeling. But that's like one of the most important things. And then with what you're doing with Mutt Society, it all kind of comes together. and then, I talked to Caleb, and he's like, yeah, before this big event we're going to do, come up and we'll go for a big group ride with everybody, and everybody from my foundation, Empowered to Ride, like all this stuff. And I'm like, man, you know what? Like, there's a plan here. Like, there's a plan here for me. There's a reason I've been through all this shit. And, so that just kind of like adds more energy to me. And I just know I'm in the right place doing the right things. And, I got to thank you for keeping me in mind. And I think it's going to be amazing. I'd be lying to you if I didn't tell you I was the most scared I've ever been to get on stage in front of 8,000 people. But at the same time, I know that's what I'm built for. And I know that when I get up there, there'll be massive energy. And the fact that I can tell my story pretty raw, and it's hard to hear sometimes for some people, but in front of all those people, third grade to 12th grade, they know people suffering with the same problems I have, and maybe
Yep.
their parents, their friends, anybody, right? And if I can help them understand that, and even the people that aren't suffering, on how they can help, support the people that are, I think it could change a lot of people's, minds, and help them. And it's all through bikes, man. It's very special. That's really what it comes down to, Trent. So, thank you, for reaching out when you did a long time ago, because if you hadn't, we wouldn't be sitting here today. I wouldn't be having the opportunity to go speak to these people, and wouldn't have the opportunity to change a lot of young people's lives, I truly believe. So, it's just kind of cool, man, if you ask me.
Yeah, if I can I jump into that real quick?
Yeah.
You're just stirring things up. We've had a challenge over the years, explaining or educating people on why the bicycle is so valuable. And I, the word that comes up is given up. I haven't given up, but I've realized that there's such a challenge there that maybe there's just more of a specific target of people that we need to speak to that really understand the value of the bicycle and can help support that mission. Because if you haven't, when I say to someone that has been taken out of depression by rock climbing or something else, they might see the parallel, but some people that haven't had the experience that you and I have had just don't understand how powerful anything like that. We just happen to focus on bikes, but anything like that can, it can bring you out of some really solid valleys. And so, we've been asked over the years, why not just money? Why not just food? The basic elements of survival. And I understand that argument. We've done some, maybe one step out of that, but like, art supplies to some kids that are, um, that need them. But the power of the bike and what it can do to free in the mental state and giving freedom in general, just transportation. For some, it's, a way to get to work. There's so much value to that I think if you're listening to this, or if you listen to Mike's speech in May, and haven't had that perfect parallel, just dig into it a little bit mentally, because there's so much more of a power than having the wind blow through your hair even when you're bald.
Yeah, I know it's
uh
kind of tough for the wind blowing through my hair, but I get
yeah.
getting used to it over the
Yeah,
years.
yeah, we're in
I
the
still
same
feel it
boat.
on the scalp.
Yeah.
Uh, Listen, you're right, and you're right about the parallels, right? Lifting, running, jujitsu, rock climbing, swimming, whatever. There's people get lucky to find that, and what it is it heals the mind, and I think it feeds the soul. There's nothing like moving your body. And I always tell people, like, when I was at my worst, and I'm laying on the floor of my apartment, panic attack after panic attack, can't move, just having major problems. And, obviously, wanting to take my life at some point in time. It was like 10/19 to 2019. I would never have thought a bike or anything like that would have worked. But I can tell you, when I got on that bike that day that my therapist challenged me to get on a bike and ride, um, first time getting on the bike, every symptom was there. All the panic, anxiety, the numbness in my hands, my stomach, the sweating, like just every panic symptom you could think of was coming at me. It's almost like the brain didn't want to get better, and it knew once it got on the bike, everything was going to disappear and I'd get a jump on it, you know? So that day I got on that bike, you know, I was in Everett, Mass at the time, and I took a ride down through East Boston on a bike that I had bought when I was back in the year 2000. I paid my mom and dad installments to buy this bike. It's a Cannondale Jekyll with like the attitude adjustment on the rear shock, you know, and it's like a really like a low grade Fox float shock. You probably can't find parts for it anymore, but you know, I rode it. And as I'm pedaling, you know, I'm 15 minutes in, and you know, I'm pretty out of shape at the time, you know, and fitness has obviously changed my life and the course of, you know, my future. But I just all of a sudden everything disappeared, man. The pedaling just like it sucked me into the moment. And the brain was just focusing on all the inputs coming in from the bike and paying attention where you need to be. And it was just that distraction that we all need that none of us can get nowadays. You know, when you're sucked into your phone, you know, all the constant sound that's going on around you and the distraction, the emails, the texts, the alerts, everything coming at you. It's like for that 45 minutes, nobody could touch me. It's kind of like when you jump on an airplane and your phone doesn't work, you know, it's kind of like you're just there with yourself. But the danger of being by yourself without doing activity is the brain sometimes can kind of get a handle on you. But the bike freed me from every single thing that was chasing me. And I used it to kind of just bolster my health, my mental health. I kind of just said, okay, when I go back to the bicycle, I can get relief. And I needed relief because I was in a really bad place. And I just kept riding. And then I started that charity, you know, bike. And then I started meeting people that were out riding, and they all have very similar stories. You know, you talk to a lot of veterans. There's a lot of groups out there. That I've actually got to meet through the bike, MTB Vets, Ride It Out MTB, like all these different groups, kind of like yourself, but they bring veterans out and they get them on
Mm-hmm.
bicycles. And then you hear the stories of like, hey, I was suffering with massive PTSD, same as me, you know, same issues, all the symptoms. And then they would talk about some of the issues as far as, thoughts of suicide and things like that. And they're like, dude, when I get on the bike, it all goes away. And like the bike has saved me. And I'm like, wow, I'm talking to the same like kind of people are understanding what I'm dealing with here
Yeah.
riding this bike, you know? So when you say it, you're right. It's hard for people to understand how a bicycle would change someone's life. But if you just got on a bike after a bad day and you just rode it and you didn't think about it, you'd understand every aspect of what I'm saying. So you kind of have to just spread the word and do like what you're doing. Get on this bike, let's go ride. And then people be like, wow, I feel amazing after riding that bike. Wow, that feeling was great. Like, because it's more than just going out for a run, right? And I think that's kind of the issue where I tell people like to go run too, because that's really been very therapeutic for me. But it's you have to be in a certain condition just to start running, right? Where the bike, you can, you have that rolling, kind of that like, rolling resistance where you can coast a little bit, you pedal a little bit, coast a little bit. And then you can get the taste of whatever riding you like to do. If you just want to ride on like a bike path, cool. If you want to go hammer downhill, take the chairlift up and just slam on the way down, like that's cool too. But Trent, I can tell you, I've taken guys out to ride with me that have never really experienced downhill mountain biking. And, immediately after they tell me like, hey dude, like I just feel better. I feel like a better
Oh yeah.
person, you know?
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So sorry I hijack you there, but it's so important to me. It's so special, and I'm glad
Yeah,
you
it is.
see it.
Yeah, more. Yeah, we're spreading the word, and people do start to understand it, and we start younger too. I mean, we've evolved a little bit, and we could do a 3-hour session at some point and talk about this, but um, we did start to focus on the youth, getting kids on bikes, and a lot of it, we've done our Romania trip, got 5 kids on Santa Cruz Bronsons, so enduro
Nice.
style. But every year with our bike drives, let's say we do 300 to 500 kids on bikes a year, and they're just any kind of bikes that we have just to get them on 2 wheels. And I say this, and I watched it happen this year in Lynn. I watched one of our athletes, Derek Hines, one of our partners, one of my good friends, just a good human being, holding the seat of an 18-year-old riding a bike for the first time. And
Oh,
that's
wow.
powerful to me, because then the kid's ear to ear, and you don't know, it might be the individual that might never have gotten a bike. It might be the individual that actually um, can benefit from it, or it might just be a functional addition. But it's
That
a
must have been special to
solid
witness
push.
that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Every year we teach kids that are almost adults ride.
Wow. Yeah. So, that's also special, to me because I see you can head off a problem, right? If you get somebody into a passion, right? And I think that, if I can kind of look back as I, kind of started entering some of the issues I was having, I didn't have anything like all the things I had loved. I had kind of put to the back burner. I was focusing on my career. I thought that, hey, you gotta work all day, never sleep, and do all this fucking shit to be successful. And I got very distracted, and that's not actually how you do it, right? But I pushed away all the passions. I pushed away building cars. That was like something that has always been a love of mine. Literally, the reason I got a job as a kid was to buy car parts, right? And you know what? 38 years old, this shit still hasn't changed. I still feel like I just work for car parts. My wife
Yeah.
probably wouldn't be so thrilled if she heard me saying that, but she's been around 19 years, so she understands that that's like a truth, right? And
Yes.
then, and then it was bikes. I loved riding bikes. I remember coming home from school and just going and out and pedaling until I had nothing left to give. And then I'd come home or I'd be down at the jumps, hanging out with everybody, just on bikes, to the point where your ass was sore at the end of the night from riding around all day. But I pushed all those passions away. And, I was doing nothing. I was just going to work, coming home, sitting on the couch, watching TV, and then like repeating the process. And I can sit here and say that once your brain decides that it doesn't need to keep learning and keep progressing, that's when like the depression kicks in, and that's when like you start to feel lost. So the bike kind of restored that purpose for me and said, wow, the shit that you used to love as a kid, you still love, as an adult. Well, you need to start to enter all those passions again. So, I did. I started building bikes. That my personal bike I got in Mountain Bike Magazine. That was pretty sick. I thought that was cool. So then I had a friend push me to do this charity bike. Did the charity bike. That fucking was amazing, right? And then I'm like, all right, just gonna keep riding bikes, keep having fun. Then I buy it. Then I buy a car. I buy a project car. I build that car, made like, whatever, 515 horsepower at the wheels, a turbo Honda S2000. So start getting happier. And I'm like, man, like I love this shit. Why did I stay away from it for so long? So what you're doing is you're giving somebody a passion that doesn't have one. So that 18-year-old kid who had never had the opportunity and never had maybe an adult to like take an interest in them and say, hey, this is how you ride a bike, like shit that you and I might take for granted because we learned it at such a young age. Like that's fucking special. You're setting that person up for a different life. Like the guy that before not knowing how to ride a bike and the guy after, two different people. And I know people are like, yeah, great, Mike. Like the guy learned to ride a bike. So much fucking more than that, and
Yeah, I
that's the
agree.
opportunity you're offering others. And it's very special, Trent, really is.
Yeah, it's cool. You as well. But yeah, that's what it's turned into. I mean, we started. It was Hurricane Maria really got us going because we just met some people down in Puerto Rico that were building trails. We stood at the top of a mountain in Yasco, riding some of the best trails of our lives. I have this in our deck. It's just what
That's
I say every
awesome.
time. But it's
That's awesome.
um, and we were just let's give a little back, and then the hurricane hit, and it was just a pretty it was just one of those serendipitous things that, negatively of course because of the hurricane, but where just we were in the right place at the right time to help out and do something for a community, um, and then just kind of grew from there. It's honestly almost, I think we're almost in our ninth year. It's pretty crazy. So we've been holding steady.
It's cool, man. And you got some support from some pro athletes, I think, which is also helps, right? It's always good for
Yep.
getting the word out. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's the next thing for you? I mean, what do you got on the map?
Um, well, like I said, we've had a challenge with some fundraising. So actually, the last couple of weeks, we've been talking to the board, and we've been saying this. Let's go back to the roots, and it's really from those Puerto Rico days. Let's just live our lives with a good heart forward, and look for those smaller opportunities. I think for a long time there, we just tried to, I look at Tony Hawk's skate park project all the time, just watching what they're doing, and they just have such solid funding behind it. So they have this, well-oiled organization running. And not to say we're you know we do all the things we have to do, but it's we tried to make it this thing that I'm not sure it was. I want to bring it back in 2025 and like bring really the heart back into it and have those random things that aren't governed by um, a plan. I want to look for those kids in the communities just randomly that need something and kind of, in a sense, lead by example. But I don't ever need to be the example. It's just people say a lot, hey, you're doing such a good job. What a good guy. And I think you know this as well as I do. It's the reward's right in the action. Like there's no, I don't really need thanks for it. I'm not doing it because I want people to see it. You do things like this with the right mind and just you get the reward immediately. So
I
it's
like that.
I want to do more. I want to do more of that this year. Take some of the guardrails we've put on ourselves to, make things work seamlessly and have a couple perfect programs and want to bring it back to its roots.
So kind of like when you say that, I feel like talk about identity. I always kind of challenge myself to kind of figure out what my true identity is, right? And you're kind of doing that right now with your business. You're trying to figure out, and it's a
That's exactly right, dude.
yeah. So you're trying to just say, all right, I know who we are. I know who we are now. It doesn't match the identity that I have for when I either started or when I felt the best when I was doing this, or what does it look like when it's right? And again, I like that. I like no rules. I like that. I like hearing you say that because sometimes rules can change, the development of what you're creating. And any creation, I think, that you create with no rules is always better when you're done. Listen, I'll follow rules, but when it comes to creation, I really don't give a fuck about what
Mhm.
anybody thinks, right? So when you're talking about, hey, like I'm walking down the street of Puerto Rico and I see somebody that's got a bike that has two flat tires and the kid has a passion, like I want to walk over there and say, hey, listen, come with me. We got a bike for you, and that type of shit right there is life changing. Like that human being will remember that for the rest of their life. Hey, I was hanging out in my front yard. My parents are just struggling to put food on the table, and some guy walks by and gives me a bike, and who knows, kid turns into a professional bike rider at some point in his life, or stays out of trouble his entire life and has a great life because somebody got him, pedaling and got him that freedom that we keep talking about, and that sense of feeling great and
Yes.
feeling one with the world. I think when you ride a bike, especially out in nature, you just feel like part of the earth. It's very interesting. But what you're doing and reflecting on where you're at and where you want to be takes a lot as a person, because we get so stuck in looking at what the final image of what it needs to be, or we have to kind of hang out in these bumpers of what society says we have to do with whatever we're creating. And right now you're at like a turning point where you're gonna where this could really change how things go for Mutt Society. So my best advice to you is, figure out what the true identity is, um, and then be unapologetic about it and make it exactly as you see it. When you close your eyes, it's
Yeah, that's cool, dude. And I think, you know, wrapping this whole essence up um, is assisted by, I know you're not suggesting it's just people in Puerto Rico, but I think even in my mind for a while there, it was like, let's go to these other countries and help people. And what you start to realize is that you can find the wealthiest town in the U.S. or in the world, and there's a kid that's been overlooked even by wealthy parents. That's why I try not even to say, I never say poor, but it's like kids without access or means to have a bike. It
yeah.
could be a child that, at some point will have a trust fund, but just at that point, their family structure isn't supporting their desire to go outside or have, you know, the access. So it's anywhere. And then the other thing is that I think I got it into my head with some of these programs that you needed to keep supporting, which is what other programs do very well, and it's admirable and amazing and it's needed. But what we really, I think at the core, we just want to make that little spark, like just that, holy shit, some guy gives a shit about me, or wow, I had never had a bike, didn't know the freedom it could give me, and it's helped me through whatever it is, struggle or get me to work. It's just that little thing that helps potentially one out of 5,000 kids that we help potentially actually changes the entire trajectory of their life. You
Yeah, well,
can't give you can't only support the kids that you know you'll change their lives. It's that you support a bunch to really help a few. Um,
yeah.
these are things like I'm just trying to start to remember and just like I said, get back to the roots and just kind of yeah have the
Well,
right
figure out why
vibe.
figure out why you started, right? You
Yep.
know deep down somewhere. So, what you have to do is you got to present that to the unconscious, right? So tonight when you go to bed, you just have to sit there and you have to think like, geez, why did I start? Why did I start this? What was the driving force? And then let it marinate. And then I guarantee you tomorrow you open your eyes, you wake up and you'd be like, this is why I fucking started. And this is where we're
Yeah.
going. So that's not like something you can just sit around thinking about all day. You gotta think about it, shut the machine down, and let the unconscious do the work. Because that's where all of it happens. I read a really cool book about it just recently. Super super awesome book. It was recommended to me too by I met my first. I met this really interesting individual. He has his own kind of investment firm, and he's done very well for himself. He turned like $100,000 into $1.5 billion. And he recommended me some reads, that I should read that would change my life. And I've been reading some of his books he's recommended, and they are life changing. And this is one of them that I'm talking about. So it talks about kind of presenting to the unconscious and letting that kind of be the deciding force, and then just allowing the brain to do the work. We never do. We always think like we're sitting there thinking, but it's like you don't understand what's going on in the background while you're asleep or while you're distracted or while you're riding a bike. You can have some great thoughts there too. So what you said to me is very impactful. A lot of people don't, depending on who their family is, don't go outside and aren't in nature. And so really kind of interesting story. When I first started getting back into riding my bike, I hadn't been in the woods in a long time riding, so I just kind of started riding on the street because I was living close to the city. And um, I kind of grown really numb, I hadn't pushed myself. I hadn't experienced any real like physical pain or anything like that. I just became very comfortable, very lazy. Just avoiding every discomfort, right? That's how I thought I could manage my stress, would just avoid everything. So I went up to some local trails just kind of north up in Boxford, and I took the bike out, and I was riding clipless at the time because that's what I had on there. So it was, you need some practice when you're riding clipless, right? Like, so
Yep.
I'm riding, and I come up to a pretty good hill, and I'm like trying to navigate my way down, and I wipe out and smash my knee and my elbow, and I start bleeding, and I'm like, I can still remember this. I stood up, and I was like, you know what, man, feels great. Like I feel alive. Like I've been dead for so fucking long inside. Here I am bleeding my elbow and my knees bleeding. I'm like, that fucking pain feels great. And I can
Yeah.
remember it. It just like woke me up, Trent. And that was like kind of just, this is like something that just flashed into my head as we're talking. It was special, man. And at that point forward, I just was like, you know what, dude, like, let's seek the discomfort. Let's do everything that I'm scared of. And let's see what we can do with life. And, my entire life has changed since then. I look back, I
Yeah.
don't even recognize myself, but, I can't wait to see what Mutt Society, comes up with next. And you getting back to your roots will just absolutely like rejuvenate you. I mean,
Yeah.
do
I agree.
you feel that way? Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm already super pumped about it. I think everybody's that's at the core of it is 100% on board. And I think what we should do, if you're down, is after the May event, maybe connect on a different level after you've kind of gone through that. And I've had a couple months under my belt for changing the course a little bit. It'd be cool to revisit it, and it could just be cool for you and I just to have something to look back on in posterity and see
Yeah.
the
Hey,
differences in mindset. But
get a ride in, enjoy ourselves, but like, I just like when I see people doing things that they're passionate about, like if it were up to me, man, I've done pretty good in my career so far. I've got a long way to go. I got big plans, but the end game is to disappear. The end game is to move to Vermont and ride my bike for the rest of my life. Like that's the end game. Most people are like, oh, what do you want to do? And like, oh, I want the big house. I want this. I want that. It's like, dude, I want like a small little house, bring my cars up there, ride my bikes, have a coffee shop, that's like a bikes themed coffee shop. That's my dream, man. That like disappear in Vermont. And, you know, um, I just know like when I'm up in Burke, and I'm riding trails in Burke and you do like a 25-mile loop and like you think you'd be tired after, but you're not. And then I go kind of sit in the river and, have a couple drinks. And I'm like, like I could die right now and my life would be perfect, and
yeah,
and my wife doesn't ride bikes, but she loves Burke too. So it's just like a perfect match. But if it would just wouldn't be the same if it weren't for the bike.
yeah,
Um, Maybe it's some sort of symbolism. I haven't quite nailed it, writing that speech for that, for that event in May. Some of the lines get me choked up, when I talk about when I was riding, like that was the moment that I took my power back. That one kind of twists me up a little bit. When I see the words and I go to say them, it's very powerful. I don't know why. But that bike was a tool that took me from being gone to being back again. And that's something that most people don't necessarily live through,
yeah,
so I feel very fortunate to be here. And, that's why I try to spread the word about bikes all the time. So what you're doing really resonates with me in so many different ways. And, I appreciate being vulnerable too the day you call me, because that's not an easy thing for guys, like us to do. We're supposed to be, society says we're supposed to be a certain way. And
yeah,
not talking about our feelings is what most people have taught us over the years. But you sharing with me as a complete stranger, I just felt like I could give you decent advice. It's just odd how that works. And just like I was desperate at the time and I would do anything, you were feeling a certain way and you were like, man, if it says go ride my bike, I'm gonna go ride my bike. And,
yeah,
right. And I mean, shit seemed to work out.
yeah.
Right.
Sometimes you need someone to tell you something you already know.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, we're not really great at giving ourselves advice. We're really good at giving other people advice,
Yeah,
and that's proven. So that's why you have to have good people around you. I talk about curating your circle all the time, and having that positive energy around you. And I'm sure you've got that around you. And I've never met. This is what's kind of cool about it is I forgot to mention community. Your driving community is what you're doing as well. So when you, at least from my perspective, so when you get people on bikes and you do these things, they enter a community that they've never been a part of before and never had access to.
yeah,
Um, right. So I've never met somebody in the mountain biking community that I was like, that person sucks. They're an asshole. I've never ever, and maybe they are once they get off the bike and they're driving down the street or they're at their full-time job. But when we're all on our bikes and, you meet on a trail somewhere and you stopping and you're chatting, like, I mean, Trent, tell me if I'm wrong here, but I mean, I've met some great people like in the middle of nowhere in Vermont on my bike, and we're just sitting there totally stoked out of our minds, just
yeah. It's
living
not a lot
life.
of Yeah, there's not a lot of bad souls riding through the woods like that. At least in
Right?
that moment. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
100%.
It's special. So you're giving people a ticket to the community.
Yeah, that's a cool way to look at it. Definitely.
Yeah, that's how I see it. You're giving them an opportunity to be a part of a club that most people don't get to join.
A little glimpse, a little glimpse
And
and an opportunity.
yeah, and then you let it grow. You let it marinate and you let them grow it themselves, right? And that's what becomes so beautiful about the whole thing.
Exactly.
So tell me, the next big ride. Where are you guys traveling to?
I don't have anything planned. This year is pretty crazy. I'm out here. We got 4 or 5 days driving back, and then we start to do a little bit of the end of summer planning. So we'll get something on the books pretty soon here, but not positive where. We'll
It's
see.
exciting,
They
man.
they usually they come up sporadically. You know,
That's
the unplanned adventure is the best one.
so. I'm guessing you don't have your bike with you now.
No, no, this was last minute. We'll be taking like the north route, so it'll be pretty cold. We could have, of course, we talked about it, but we just didn't. I don't know if it's going to be enough time.
Well, talking to you, man, invigorates me. I didn't get enough time on the bicycle last year. I was training for some things that didn't allow me to get on the bike. And I can tell you right now, when I look through my journal, I can see that, there was some stressors there that I probably could have wiped out with riding a bike. So, talking to you today, we have a little rain here today, and the snow's starting to clear up. So I might have to get out there and start shredding, and Highland opens up, relatively soon, and we're ready to rock and roll. So listen, man, I know you got a lot to do. You got any closing thoughts for us tonight?
Just get out there and ride, man. Go ride your bike. That's
I
the
love it.
that's the thought. Yeah.
I love it, dude. Let's leave it at
Or get
that. Get out there and ride your fucking bike.